During my sophomore year of college, I was a classic nerd, absorbed in math and oblivious to the social scene. I found peace in the library's quiet corners, away from the campus chaos, immersed in equations and theories. Although I wasn't unattractive, I believed my intellectual focus left no room for romance. One night, reluctantly attending a party, I sat alone with a beer, feeling out of place. That's when Tracy, the campus beauty and my secret crush, unexpectedly joined me. She was stunning, drawing everyone's attention, yet she chose to talk to me. Our connection was immediate, and soon we were inseparable, marrying shortly after graduation. "Oh my goodness, Mark, you're still unmatched in every way," Tracy exclaimed joyfully. Her praise, though flattering, was troubling. After nearly 3 decades of marriage, why was she comparing me to other men? This thought struck me hard, making me gasp as if punched. We were in an otherwise close moment, and her words were disconcerting. "My God, Mark, you know how to turn my world upside down," Tracy said. I lay with my head on her thigh, unmoving. Tracy, puzzled, asked, "Aren't you going to continue?" "No, I'm tired, baby. You took all my strength." She kissed me and lay back down. Normally we would cuddle before cleaning up, but Tracy fell asleep quickly. I quietly went to the bathroom, cleaned up, and headed downstairs for a drink. Having an above-average IQ that rarely shuts off can be a curse. Most men might not have noticed Tracy's comment, but I did. Sipping a glass of Staley's rye whiskey, I racked my brain for signs of trouble in our marriage, but found none. Our bed life had improved since our youngest left for college 6 months ago, and Tracy had lost 20 pounds, looking hotter and back to her college weight of 120 pounds. At 51, she had a goddess-like body with perfect bosoms and great legs, her beauty undiminished by age, inherited from her mother. We met in college, dated for 2 years, and married at 22. Tracy's flirtatious nature never worried me until now. She believed her looks could charm any man, but that confidence had never bothered me before. Tracy's beauty had always drawn attention, as evidenced by an incident at work where she unintentionally interrupted a conversation, causing annoyance and amusement. Since she was 14, Tracy's looks had always attracted attention. Although she had gained 20 pounds, she still looked great at 51. She thought of Rhonda, a 26-year-old colleague, as a friend, and found her comment about a cheesecake bum inappropriate. Carl, a new agent at the office, was incredibly handsome, 6'4", and in great shape. Tracy noticed his attractiveness, but mentally reminded herself that she was happily married. Tracy skipped lunch with the girls and headed to the gym near the office to sign up for a membership. Miss Cheeseback will pay for her indiscretion, she thought, driving away. As I sat in my den on my 3rd drink, my mind wandered back to when Tracy and I first met at a large Midwestern university. I was a math nerd who worked out regularly, but Tracy was a goddess, and goddesses don't date geeks. I knew of her, but never talked to her, seeing her surrounded by guys vying for her attention. At parties and on campus, I admired her beauty from afar, never daring to approach her amidst the crowd of good-looking suitors. A few weeks later, at another party, I was quietly drinking beer when someone sat next to me, interrupting my thoughts. To my surprise, it was the girl of my dreams. "So are you homo or bi?" she asked. "It's okay, man. I'm not against either. But every straight guy tries to chat with me, and you're not married, so what is it?" I blushed and stuttered, unable to process her presence. She was stunning up close, and I started to get aroused. "So that's how it is?" she said, noticing my reaction. "No," I finally croaked. "I'm straight. I just didn't think you'd have time for someone like me with all those guys around you." "Well, you don't put yourself out there, honey. We women sometimes like our men a little mysterious." We left the party together and got married right after graduation. I knew Tracy's social standing was higher than mine, but I knew how to please her in bed. I turned Tracy into a quivering mess our first night together and can still do it today, even though she seems less interested now. Tonight was different. Tracy and I hadn't made love for 2 weeks, the longest gap since she had our kids. She always had an excuse. Too tired, not in the mood. I stopped asking after a while. As she rinsed a pot at the sink, I approached her from behind, cupping her bosoms. She tried to push me away, but I persisted, eventually leading her to our bedroom. I undressed her quickly. She usually screamed unintelligibly, but tonight, for the first time in 29 years, she was talkative. Her hell yes was enjoyable until her comments on my skills brought me back to reality. 2 weeks after the break room incident, Tracy began her campaign to seduce Carl Walters. They were working on a deal, providing her the perfect excuse to invite him to dinner. It seemed professional, like when she invited other agents to discuss work, as she was the senior agent and top producer. This time, she made sure Rhonda knew about the dinner. Tracy handled the business first. A deal is a deal. With business settled, Tracy turned on the charm. Over wine, she learned all about Carl's football days and personal life. He mentioned a girlfriend, but they weren't exclusive. Tracy frequently touched his arm and wrist, her blazer unbuttoned, revealing a tight white top. Leaning forward often, she noticed Carl's reaction, confirming her effect on him. "Men are so easy," she thought. "He's mine, but he doesn't know it yet. When I lose another 5 pounds, he'll get his gift." The private investigator I hired was worth the money I planned to spend on a Hawaii vacation. His findings showed Tracy was regularly having sex with Carl Walters, a guy named Fred Lazarus, and her gym trainer. The investigator seemed nervous delivering the report, making me wonder if he too was entangled with my unfaithful wife. While not a total nerd, I've made a diverse group of friends over the years. One of my oldest friends is a lawyer named Martin Bolins. Like me, Marty is a smart, geeky guy, but if I ever needed legal help, Marty would be there for me. He might not break a pencil in half, but he's known for being ruthless in court. We both agreed that Tracy should face consequences for her infidelity. We didn't live in a no-fault state, so why let her hide behind irreconcilable differences? Tracy initially planned to sleep with Fred Lazarus just once. He was Rhonda's fiancé who had insulted her. Tracy wanted to show Rhonda what a real woman's body was like. Keeping it a secret from Rhonda, Tracy relished the idea of smirking at her for years. However, Fred's 9 inches and skill changed her mind. She decided to enjoy him more than once, finding excuses to use him instead of Carl or to be away from me. Darren Trimble as a lover was unplanned. A gym trainer, Darren's muscular physique caught Tracy's eye. During a one-on-one session, his hands on her shoulders ignited a spark. She pressed against him, and soon they were at his flat, tearing off their clothes with urgency. Tracy came home from Darren's place 30 minutes late, still in workout clothes. I walked in 5 minutes later. She quickly showered and started dinner, acting like nothing happened. Knowing she had a trainer and seeing her newly toned body, I assumed she had a long workout. She looked scared and avoided our usual greeting, muttering about needing to wash off sweat. Her excuse might have worked if not for my private investigator's report. Despite my anger, I stayed calm. That evening, while Tracy put away dishes and I watched TV, the doorbell rang. She called me to check, but I saw it was the process server. I asked her to open it. She laughed, but soon staggered into the living room holding a manila envelope. "What the hell?" she hissed, looking at the opened envelope. "How could you do this to me? What about our family?" "You're just mad I beat you to it," I replied calmly. "Given time, you would have done this to me. You don't love me anymore. I know about your affairs." My voice choked up. Tracy's face turned from shock to rage. "You think you know something? Go ahead. Say it. I'm all ears." "Carl Walters, Fred Lazarus, and," I pulled out a small piece of paper, "Darren Trimble." Tracy looked like she'd been punched. She sat down, realizing I had more than just suspicions. "If you were braver, we wouldn't be discussing this," she spat. I sighed. Apparently 29 years wasn't enough for loyalty. None of those guys were even born when we got married. Her eyebrows shot up, realizing I knew more than she thought. She seemed ready to argue, but stopped herself. "I'll let you stay in the house until we sell it. You can explain to the kids and your parents," I said quietly. I stood up, grabbed 2 packed suitcases from the hallway closet. She didn't expect that. "I'll come by in a few days for the rest of my things. Get a lawyer, decide what you want, and call Marty. It's clear you don't care about me anymore, so let's end this quickly." I had no idea what crashed against the wall as I entered. Though Mark was right and Tracy planned to divorce him, she wasn't ready yet. She was strategizing how to paint him as the villain. She knew their friends liked Mark and would side with him quickly. For the kids, she intended to attack his masculinity, hoping they'd understand her desire for frequent, thrilling sex. Mark's move surprised her, and she wondered if someone had informed him about her affairs. Unaware she was the leak. Surprisingly, Mark seemed less devastated than she expected. When she served him with divorce papers, she was alarmed by how well he took it. Almost enjoying the situation, I felt proud. Leaving with my suitcases, I could tell Tracy was caught off guard. I checked into a nearby motel, ready to start over. Tracy fought hard on one aspect of the divorce. She wanted the reason changed to irreconcilable differences instead of infidelity. Despite getting 50% of everything, it wasn't about the money. She likely planned to twist the story in front of the kids and her parents to make me look bad. Keeping the infidelity claim gave me leverage. "There's no reason for everyone to know our personal business," she shouted over the phone one evening. "Change the statement to irreconcilable differences and I'll sign immediately." "Tracy, I know geeks can be socially awkward, but your logic is transparent. I won't let you lie to escape this. You chose to cheat while we were still married, and now it's public. All you had to do was respect me enough to divorce me first." Tracy tried to humiliate me by spreading rumors that I was bad in bed. I heard it from friends who got the info from their wives. She thought I'd cave to avoid embarrassment. The hardest part was when my youngest daughter, Allison, accused me of stalking Tracy to soothe my ego. "If your mom wants to play dirty, let's go," I said. "She probably told you about her affair, but did she mention she's with 3 guys a little older than your sister?" "3," I emphasized, holding up 3 fingers. "I may not be as young as I once was, but I can still take care of myself. This isn't about me. Your mother has become self-centered. 3 guys, Allison. Doesn't she love me anymore? Fine. But she didn't need to sleep with 3 guys who should be dating you, not her." Allison looked shocked, stuttering and crying in my kitchen. I'd never spoken so harshly or criticized Tracy in front of her. Allison left my apartment looking lost and confused. It took all my willpower not to stop her and give her a comforting hug. 20 minutes later, Tracy's mother, Barb, called me. We hadn't spoken since I filed for divorce, but we used to have a great relationship. "How could you say such horrible things to my granddaughter, you idiot?" Barb screamed over the phone. "She used to adore you, and now she's crying on my couch. How could you say such terrible things about Tracy?" "Mom, please listen. You've only heard one side, not mine. Tracy's with 3 guys. If you don't believe me, I have proof." Barb gasped. "Oh my God, Mark, do you have photos? Videos?" "Yes, Mom," I said quietly. I didn't want to go nuclear, but Tracy forced my hand. "No, Mark, that's not necessary. I'll talk to her. 3 guys? I'm so sorry, Mark. Truly." She hung up quietly. I shook my head as I hung up. Barb had been like a mother to me since my dad died 12 years ago. We used to discuss my problems, but now I had to reveal Tracy's infidelity, crushing her. The divorce was granted on the grounds of infidelity after a year. Tracy likely continued seeing her 3 lovers, but I wasn't tracking her anymore. Life had become interesting for me. About a month after filing for divorce, 2 women from the university's science department visited my basement office to check on me. Though I barely knew them, it was nice of them to show concern. Both were good-looking. One divorced in her 50s, the other widowed in her 40s. Over the next few weeks, many women from campus stopped by to see how I was doing. One day, as I was leaving my office, the administrative secretary of the mathematics department gave me a radiant smile. "Okay, Colleen, spill it. What's going on? Did I inherit some money?" "You seriously have no idea, do you?" Colleen, a 35-year-old curvy divorcee with raven hair and green eyes, asked mockingly. I noticed for the first time how beautiful she was. "It's because of your recent weight loss, Mark," she explained, emphasizing her ring finger. "You lost 120 pounds. You were always a nice guy, but being married made you off limits. Now, with no ring, it's hunting season. Good guys like you are rare, smart, nice, and single." Someone saw the divorce papers and the news spread across campus. But the divorce isn't finalized yet. I won't be free for a few months. Everyone wants you to know they're waiting for you. By the way, I'm applying too, Dr. Robertson. Okay. I'll put your application in the queue." "Really? You're so charming." Tracy thought Mark wouldn't talk about their situation, but within 2 weeks, everyone knew, and it continued until the divorce was final a year later. "Are you crazy, Tracy? How could you let the sweetest guy in the world leave you?" Marge Rochambeau, Tracy's oldest friend, asked her a month after Mark filed. "Oh crap, how does she already know?" Tracy wondered. Marge lived 2 hours away, and Tracy thought she had time before telling friends and family. Someone must have spilled the beans. "Okay, it's a long story," Tracy began, trying to figure out how to explain. "I heard from my mom after she broke down in Walmart last week," Marge said. Marge had called Barb Mom since 2nd grade. When she asked Barb about Tracy, Barb stuttered, rambled, and finally burst into tears, revealing everything. "You cheated on a wonderful man because he got older and you thought you deserved better? What about him? You're getting older too, and you're not the same as when you were 30. Have you considered that?" Marge shouted. "I always knew you had a selfish side, but I never thought you'd show it to Mark." On the day the divorce was finalized, Mark sat in his apartment eating a small salad and drinking half a 750-milliliter bottle of Buffalo Trace bourbon. Meanwhile, Tracy invited Carl to a fancy dinner, and afterward, they went back to his place. This scene had played out many times over the past year and a few months. But this time, Tracy couldn't keep the candle lit. She disliked what was happening, but admitting it to herself, or even more so to him, was out of the question. When it was finally over, she told him she was tired and needed to go home. She carefully removed Carl's hands from her chest, got dressed, and left, noting as she got into her car that her first official night as a divorced woman was far from successful. I have a genius IQ. I can crack passwords in my head and read 4 books at the same time, but I have no idea how to understand a woman, I told Judy Scalise, a longtime friend of Tracy and me, during our dinner on my first official date 2 weeks after the divorce. I chose Judy because she was an old friend, ensuring there would be no misunderstandings between us. I thought I had you girls figured out, but apparently I was just fooling myself for 30 years. So, what should I do next? Judy was an artist, and I always found her thought processes unique. She was a couple of years younger than me, kept fit with regular stretching and yoga, and her smooth skin belied her age. She had dark brown hair and blue eyes that seemed to penetrate my soul. I started thinking about her unclothed in my bed. "I was hoping you'd call eventually, Mark," she replied. "I didn't think I'd be number 1 on your list, so I'm very honored. But let's not waste time talking about you and Tracy. This can be discussed over a cup of coffee at noon tonight. Let's be 2 adults living our own lives and see what happens. How about we move on?" I nodded. "I agree. You can't move forward if you're busy looking back." I stood up, leaned toward Judy, and planted what I hoped was a firm kiss on her soft lips. She also stood up, leaned over the table, and tried to suck my tonsils out of my mouth. I almost choked when she finally let me gasp for air. Before that night, I had never thought about Judy physically. Yes, she was beautiful, and I appreciated her great body. But I didn't lust after other women when I was married. Firstly, I was married, and secondly, why would I lust after another woman when I was married to a goddess? I'd been out of the game for a long time, and it showed. I don't think my complexion returned to normal until the end of the meal, but I tried to relax and be calm. I think I managed to have a coherent conversation. We ate a slice of cheesecake and each had coffee for dessert. "And then I think we need to go back to my house for a real nightcap," Judy said, looking into my eyes. "If I'm not mistaken, you haven't had sex since you left Tracy. I would like to be your first after the Queen." I know it sounds stupid, but I was actually afraid to have sex with Judy. It had been a long time, and I knew I wouldn't last long. And then I would need time to recharge, since I'm not 21 anymore. And since Judy was a friend of both Tracy and me, well, I wouldn't want the whole town to know about my failure. Dr. Marklin Robertson, genius professor of computational physics at the university, is a loser in bed. I could see everyone thinking that Tracy was right to leave me since I was an underachiever where it really mattered. Judy made coffee when we got to her house and then excused herself to change into something more comfortable. My head was spinning. Judy returned wearing what looked like a terry robe made of a pullover with straps that only reached mid-thigh. Her mamillas stuck out through the thin terry cloth, showing she had taken off her bra. I was more than a little interested. We sat together on her couch, drinking coffee and chatting innocently. I tried not to drool. "Mark, wake up, Mark," I heard Judy's voice echo in my mind. Oh my gosh, am I drooling? I wondered. Judy gently took the coffee cup from my hand, set it on the table, and quietly led me to her bedroom. I was barely conscious as she slowly undressed me completely. "Wow, slow down," I whispered as my brain began to function. "It's been a long time, and I'm not ready for this to end quickly." "Relax, Mark. I understand," Judy replied. "We can do this again." "I'm patient, but not that patient," I said, removing her robe. "I'd say everything went well." "Did you really have to be that irresistible?" Judy half said, half asked as we lay side by side, looking into each other's eyes. "Well, yeah, that's what I'm here for, isn't it?" I replied. "Oh my God, Mark." Judy moved closer to me and then turned her back so I could hug her. We fell asleep, and I slept deeply for several hours before waking up to the wonderful feeling of Judy from the waist down. "Good morning, Sonia." "Good morning to you too," I replied happily. "You are incomparable, honey," she said, looking me straight in the eyes. A month later, Tracy met Judy for lunch at one of their favorite spots. Tracy called and invited Judy, knowing the dinner was about her time with Tracy's ex. Judy had met Mark a few times before, and she didn't think the call was random. They spent the first 10 minutes catching up on the latest news and their children before Tracy finally addressed the main issue. "Lots of dates, Judy? Really? I thought you didn't exercise anymore." Tracy said with a cat-like purr, sipping her margarita. Judy blushed as Tracy spoke. Although she expected this, she felt less comfortable than she had anticipated. What she thought would be a one-time curiosity-satisfying encounter turned into something more personal when Mark Robertson gave her unforgettable dates. This man sure was a master at sex, Judy thought to herself. Is he always this good? Judy asked, awestruck like a teenager. Tracy was puzzled by Judy's assessment of her ex-husband's talents, as she had assumed Mark wouldn't put in as much effort with a mistress as he did with his wife. Judy's reaction confirmed that Mark had rocked her world. How could you let this man leave your life? Are you crazy, little sister? Smart, handsome, sweet, and a damn wizard? Tracy's smile vanished. She quickly sipped her margarita, raised her eyebrows, and changed the subject. Judy saw that her praise of Mark was not what Tracy had expected, and allowed Tracy to steer the conversation away from Mark. Molly Hamilton was pressed against my right side, her hand on my chest, breathing rhythmically in her sleep. We had just finished a wild sex session. It wasn't lovemaking, and I was exhausted. I felt bad, sticky, but like $1,000,000. If I live to be 100, I'll never understand women. My ex-wife cheated on me because she said I couldn't satisfy her physically. Yet, I just had possibly the best sex of my life with the third woman I've been with in the last 3 months. I can't make sense of it all. Molly is a physician assistant in an orthopedic clinic. It sounds cliche, but I met her at the gym. She was working out hard on the machines, sweat running down her face, filling out her tight workout uniform. I usually glance at cute girls and move on, but this babe was here to work, not to attract a partner. That's why she attracted me. I waited until she finished her workout and headed to her locker before cautiously approaching her. I haven't dated many women since my divorce, despite many showing interest. But something about her dedication at the gym caught my eye. I introduced myself and asked if I could invite her over for coffee and dessert one evening. She hesitated for a moment, then agreed, entering her name and number into my phone. We smiled at each other and I admired her as she walked away. Before she exited the gym, I called her. I know this seems desperate, but now is a good time to ask this question. How about Thursday evening? I asked. She turned and looked at me through the glass door, smiling widely. My heart might have skipped a beat. So, it's Thursday evening. I'll meet you at Laszlo's at 7, she said into the phone. Needless to say, the rest of my workout went great that night. Absolutely nothing hurt. On Thursday night, I arrived at Laszlo's at 6:50, found a small table in the back, and ordered cheesecakes. Less than 2 minutes later, Molly showed up with her long blonde hair pulled back into a ponytail, wearing tight jean shorts and a t-shirt that didn't quite reach the top of her shorts. She was showing off the results of her ab workouts at the gym, and I couldn't blame her. They were definitely impressive. Her bosoms looked a little small, but they seemed to be in good symmetry with the rest of her body. Plus, she probably would have attracted too much attention if she was a little bigger because she wasn't wearing a bra, and it was easy to see when she walked up to me. I was sitting at a high-top table, so Molly had to sit up to sit in her chair while I held it for her, and her braless chest bounced when she sat down. She caught me looking at the movement and raised an eyebrow in question, so I smiled and nodded back at her. We ate cheesecake, drank coffee, and talked for 2 hours. I found myself captivated by this woman who was not much older than my daughters. I don't know if she was as keen on me, but she agreed to go out with me again the following Saturday. We visited the antique car museum before heading to a restaurant for a bite to eat. We then went back to my apartment, and the rest, as they say, is history. Clearly, the old man still had something left in the tank. While Mark was falling asleep on the other side of town, Tracy was being pleasured hard and fast by a young guy she had met earlier in the evening. She again did not enjoy herself as she would have liked. Shouldn't this have been more fun? She thought to herself as she got into the car to drive home. She took a quick look in the rearview mirror, and although she liked what she saw, something was definitely wrong, she thought to herself. Carl broke up with her a month ago, saying he wanted to start dating someone who was looking for marriage and children, 2 things Tracy couldn't give him. Carl was right, and he was nice about the breakup. But as Tracy realized then, she had been dumped for the second time in a row. First Mark, then Carl. Tracy was able to rationalize Carl's departure by noting to herself that sex with him was becoming stale. At times, she seemed disinterested. This shouldn't have happened to someone like me, she thought in the deepest recesses of her mind. As Tracy pulled into the driveway, she told herself that the next time she went out, maybe she should look for someone more her age. They might not be as hot as the younger guys, but maybe she would actually be interested in what they were talking about. Spending time with Molly only reinforced in my mind what I had always believed about Tracy. From my limited experience before I met Tracy, I always felt that she was not nearly as good at sex as others I had slept with before her, and I truly believed that it was because she was a goddess and she knew it. Women like Tracy don't have to work hard to attract guys, and at the same time, that's probably why they didn't work very hard in bed at first. They don't need to. Guys get pleasure from the fact that they managed to get a beauty with big bosoms. But after a while, it's not the same thrill, especially if the woman is selfish and doesn't really give it her all. Tracy and I had a few gentle discussions about this over the years, but I've never been able to really tell her that she's just not that good in bed. So I just went with it because I loved her. But Judy, Katie, and now Molly had shown me what great sex could be. And as I got into bed and started to fall asleep, I thought that Tracy had tricked me again. 2 weeks later, I picked up the phone to hear Tracy on the line. I was more than a little surprised and a little suspicious. I hadn't talked to her for months, and when I was with my daughters, they didn't talk about her at all because they knew I wouldn't discuss her with them. Although I wanted my daughters to love and respect their mother, I told them clearly that my relationship with their mother was over, and they needed to respect that. And so far, they have succeeded. Mark, April wants to know if we can be civil at her wedding. Robert finally proposed, and she wants us there as long as we don't act like enemies. I haven't heard from April yet, but you can assure her that I'll be the perfect gentleman. I'll remind her that you were the woman I once loved when she calls to share her good news. April called the next day to tell me her good news, and I told her the same thing I told her mother. She mentioned that Tracy would help plan the event, and I encouraged her to have the time of her life, assuring her I'd cover the costs. I'm not usually emotional, but walking April down the aisle left me stunned. My little girl, who loved dolls, silly songs, and toys, had grown into a beautiful woman inside and out. The walk down the aisle took just a couple of minutes, but in those 30 steps I saw hundreds of images flash before my eyes. When I handed her over to Robert at the altar, tears of joy streamed down my cheeks. I joined our family and stood next to Tracy, who leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. She was crying too. We danced a waltz for our father-daughter dance, and I thought it went well. Robert and his mother, Isabel, then danced a mother-son dance to the foxtrot. After that, the music turned more modern, and the hall filled with people in their 20s and 30s. I stood at the bar for about 10 minutes, sipping a single malt scotch before making my move. Tracy was on the dance floor with one of the young men, slow dancing when I walked up and asked if I could cut in. He seemed embarrassed, but Tracy beamed and extended her hand to me, making the decision for him. "You don't trust me with these kids?" Tracy teased, giving me a sideways look. "Thanks to you, half the guests think I'm a flirt. That young man you sent away pressed himself against me, hoping he'd go home with the mother of the bride." "If that's what you want, I'll bring him back," I replied. "But I thought you'd prefer talking and dancing with someone who doesn't idolize Beyoncé." "Touché," she said. "Well, unless you plan to stab me on the dance floor, I think we've done pretty well this weekend." "I should agree, but for a moment I thought April would have a panic attack when you approached me," Tracy giggled. "We haven't been very mature towards each other lately," I admitted. "But at least we waited until they left the house before we exploded," she replied. We danced through a couple of slow songs before the music sped up. Her previous dance partner returned and politely asked if he could cut in. Tracy seemed a little surprised when I agreed. Ellie joined me at our table, watching her mother on the dance floor. Without taking her eyes off the floor, she asked jokingly, "You think I'll have to worry about men chasing her when she's in a nursing home?" I glanced sideways at my daughter, not wanting her to see me checking her expression. Her tone was joking, but her eyes told me otherwise. "But what about you, Dad? Mom says you date sometimes, but replacing her seems impossible." "I'm fine, actually better than fine," I replied. "Your mom doesn't know as much about my life now as she thinks. But I'll just say that I have no shortage of female attention, and I'm not trying to replace her. I'll handle this if I want." Just then, Wendy Adams, an old family friend, came to our table. Wendy and her husband, Earl, had been friends with Tracy and me since the kids were little. Earl died a few years ago from cancer, and I know Wendy and Tracy still keep in touch. I don't see her much because Earl and I were best friends. Wendy was a couple of years younger than me, and judging by the fit of her dress, she kept herself in good shape. I invited her to join Allison and me at the table, but she just smiled and asked Allison if she would excuse us while we hit the dance floor. Allison seemed a little surprised at first, but then kindly told us to get out and shake ourselves. As we headed toward the dance floor, Allison grabbed my hand and leaned over to whisper, "Coincidences like this only happen in movies, Daddy." We danced to a couple of songs, then went to the bar and sat in the comfortable chairs right outside the room. We talked for a bit, then Wendy took my hand, looked me seriously in the eyes, and asked the $64,000 question. "Are you still in love with her, Mark? Because if that's the case, then I don't need to make a fool of myself and invite you to dinner." I didn't see this coming. I thought Wendy was pretty close to Tracy, so I never even considered asking her out. Although she was lovely, I always thought Earl was lucky to have her. I must admit I was a little surprised she wasn't snatched up right after an appropriate mourning period. I will always love her to some extent, despite what she did to me. Maybe it's like a smoking habit, but I'm not in love with her, and I don't love her with all my soul, I replied. But you and her, I don't want to create any problems between you two. I forgot that one of Wendy's best qualities was her approach to life. She quickly reminded me, "Mark, I'm not a girl anymore, and I've been alone for 8 years now. There aren't many men I'm interested in, so I'm not going to say no to someone who's right here. Tracy let you go. It's been what, 3 years since your divorce became official? And I know you're dating. You're like the #1 draft pick in the League of Fantasy Husbands. If only we had one. So no, I'm not going to lose a second of sleep worrying about what Tracy will think about us dating and other things." She blushed when she said the last part. Suddenly, I really wanted to be the one to help her get back on the horse, so to speak. I handed her my cell phone and she entered her number. Then, as I was getting my phone back, April and Robert came out of the hall looking for me. April knew who Wendy was, and the two of them chatted for a bit before Wendy said I needed to go back and play father of the bride some more. I walked up to her, took both her hands in mine, leaned down, and quickly kissed her on the lips. "To be continued," I said quietly as Wendy blushed. We did all the usual wedding things, including cutting the cake, and Tracy was practically glued to me for the rest of the night. I think maybe April told her about my conversation with Wendy, and I assumed it was a little jealousy on her part. I have to admit I was a little flattered, even if it was 3 years later. When April and Robert returned to the hall, April approached Tracy and told her they had just interrupted Mark and Wendy Adams, who appeared to be having close conversations. She said they kissed. When they separated, Allison told Tracy that she had been watching Wendy and Mark on the dance floor and that Wendy looked like a teenager in love. Allison said she thought it was cute. Judging by the look on Tracy's face, she didn't think it was cute. After making sure everything was taken care of at the end of the night, Tracy and I were left alone in the hotel lobby. I knew she had come by taxi, so I offered to give her a ride home. She agreed on the condition that I let her buy me a drink at the hotel bar. Considering this was the best Tracy and I had gotten along in years, I agreed, and we walked down the hallway and sat at a low table at the bar. "The lady will have bourbon on the rocks, and I'll just have Staley," I told the waitress when she asked for our order. "It's nice that you still remember, Mark," Tracy said. "You're still the only woman I've ever seen who knows how to drink whiskey properly," I replied. "Are you going to have fun with Wendy Adams?" She then blurted out, putting a hand to her cheek and blushing when she realized what she had said. "I regret that. I didn't mean for it to come out that way," she stammered. "I meant, are you going to date her? Over the past few years, you have dated a lot of beautiful women. I don't think you even missed me. Was it your plan to make me jealous so you could sow some wild oats?" I lowered my glass and stared into her blue eyes. She looked back at me, and her eyes seemed almost glowing. The silence between us lasted about 15 seconds as I formulated my answer. "That's a nice try, Tracy, but I seem to remember someone sowing their wild oats while we were still married. To this day, you have never explained what made you treat me so disrespectfully when I would have been perfectly happy to grow old with you." "Will this proposal still be discussed?" she interrupted. To say I was stunned would be an understatement. My jaw dropped as I stared at her. Okay, I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, an incredibly stupid mistake," Tracy sighed. "I was afraid of getting old, so I got carried away with having great sex with a young guy to prove to myself that I could still attract men like before. But in reality, it wasn't different from the physical act. It was the thrill of a new man, a young man lusting after me. I wasn't smart enough to understand it back then. When I started comparing them to you, well, you seemed lacking compared to what those kids could do. And because you were just such a sweet, innocent guy while I was having fun, I thought you were just a smartass. But I was wrong. After you left me, the thrill of the game disappeared, And after a while, the excitement of a new person, or rather people, vanished. It was still an ego boost to have a young guy half my age want me, but nothing was happening emotionally. Damn it, Mark. I'd liquidate for a hug after good sex. Have you thought about dating someone your age, someone who is in your league and understands life, even if he can't hit the high notes like those kids? After all, Tracy, no matter how good you look, you're not 22 anymore either, I said. That's what I'm trying to do now, Mark, she said decisively. We had 30 good years together. Can you forgive my error in judgment and be mine again, please? There were large tears in Tracy's eyes. Before all this started, I would have held her in my arms and tried to make the world a better place for her. Even now, after everything that had happened, part of me still wanted to do just that. In the end, to some extent, it was a victory. No, 3 years ago, this might have been a victory. Now it was just a desperate apology. I shook my head slowly. First of all, we only had about 29 good years together. I definitely wouldn't call this last year a good one. But this is real life, Tracy. In real life, we won't succeed. Come on, let's take you home. Wendy Adams ended what had turned out to be a pretty good second bachelorhood for me. I waited a week to call her after the wedding. We ate at a nice seafood restaurant a couple of towns away. She wore a tight dress, and men kept staring at her all night. But unlike Tracy, she didn't seem to notice the attention. Her attention was solely focused on me. After a great meal and conversation, we went back to her house for after-dinner drinks and dessert. She poured us both a glass of cognac, which we casually drank in about 5 minutes. Then it was time for dessert. She stood up, took my hand, and led me to the upstairs bedroom. I noted that this was not the master bedroom, and did not appear to be used very often. I completely understood her reluctance to have sex in the bed she shared with Earl. Wendy didn't need to tell me to be gentle with her. I knew she probably hadn't had sex with more than a couple of guys since Earl's pass away, if any. I knew that they were very much in love with each other. I was very gentle and slow, starting with soft kisses on her lips as I helped her take off her clothes. She then started helping me out of mine as I kissed her bare shoulders, then her upper bosoms. Her beautiful big bosoms still had life in them and stood out proudly. Tenderness gave way to passion, which I didn't even expect from this woman. When I finally looked up, she could barely breathe out enough. We kissed a little more, then just lay there entwined until I heard her breathing enter the sleep cycle. She looked like an angel, and I must have watched her sleep for a good 10 minutes. In the last 3 years since my divorce, I have experienced an amazing sexual renaissance and enjoyed women of all ages. However, there was something about this connection. Yes, I was satisfied on a sexual level, but it seemed that I had an emotional attachment to Wendy. I just started to wonder if she felt the same way as I drifted into what turned out to be my best night of sleep in forever. Although it was no longer unusual for me to wake up in a strange bed in the morning, everything about this morning felt different. It was almost like waking up on a lazy Sunday morning in the good old days with Tracy downstairs making breakfast and the girls running around her feet playing some game. But there was no Tracy there. No laughing children. Just Wendy frying up some bacon if my nose was right. And there was a pot of coffee already brewing. I put on a t-shirt and trousers. I couldn't find my shirt and staggered downstairs, not caring about anything. Then I found my shirt. Wendy was wearing my shirt and nothing else, with the sleeves rolled up to her elbows and the buttons only halfway done. My shirt has never looked better. Hey, Sonia, I hope you don't mind that I borrowed your shirt. It just smelled like you, and I wanted to keep that scent around for a while, she said. Well then, how about breakfast? I asked. Can a starving man get a little attention? She slowly sidled towards me as I spread my arms wide and pulled her into a tight hug. She smelled just like us last night, and I couldn't imagine a better scent in the whole world. I moaned. She moaned in response. We ate and discussed our plans for the day. It was Saturday, so we had all day to do whatever we wanted. We never discussed what I was going to do or what she was going to do. We discussed what we were going to do. We made several plans before I came up with the most brilliant idea of my life. This will sound completely stupid, but how about we get married today? I asked. You have an excellent IQ, she replied. I will do whatever you think is best. It was that simple. I knew the local justice of the peace had Saturday office hours, so I called to see if he was available at 4 p.m., and so it was. We had just over 7 hours to get cleaned up and ready for the wedding party. I needed a best man, and Wendy's 28-year-old son, Aaron, was more than happy to support me. Once I explained that the bride was his mother, he said he, his wife, and their 2-year-old daughter would make the hour-long drive to attend the ceremony. Wendy called her mother and asked her to be her maid of honor. When she asked, her cell phone was on speaker, and my future mother-in-law, whom I had never met, burst into tears before choking out an affirmative answer. I then called both of my daughters and invited April, Robert, Allison, and whoever she wanted to be her +1. "Do you think I should invite my mother as my guest?" she asked cheekily. "Only if you really want to, but I honestly would rather you didn't," I said. "She's had a pretty rough time lately, and I don't want to look like I'm throwing my luck in her face." One of my best friends owned a nice restaurant in town, so I quickly called him and asked if his banquet room was available for the day. He said he would be happy to provide it for me, so I booked the room for the day. We both then invited a few other people who we thought would like to celebrate this wonderful occasion with us. Before I went to the best jewelry store to buy engagement rings, Tracy was leaving her favorite boutique with some bags in her hands when she almost literally ran into Wendy on the sidewalk. Although they weren't as close as they once were, they were still friends and had been for about 25 years. They chatted amiably on the sidewalk for a few minutes before Tracy noticed 2 rings on Wendy's left hand. "My God, girl, they are absolutely amazing." Wendy blushed deeply as a light went on in Tracy's brain. Are you married to Mark?" Tracy swayed a little, and Wendy thought she might faint. She took her friend by the shoulder and helped her calm down. "I didn't know. I'm really sorry," Tracy quickly apologized. "We really didn't talk about it too much. It just all happened so fast." "Fast? It's certainly not like the Mark I know," Tracy said. "Have you ever had the feeling that everything was so right that you just had to do it?" Wendy continued. "I mean, who would let a person like that get away?" Wendy immediately raised her hand to her lips. "That's not what I meant, Tracy. Honestly, this is simple." "Yes, I understand, Wendy. It's okay. Trust me, I know I'm an idiot. Learn from my mistakes and never let this man get away." "Of course, there must be a lot of good guys out there," Tracy whined to her therapist, Dr. Ellen McForrest. "They seemed to be everywhere when I decided to leave Mark, and then they just all disappeared." "You are a smart woman, Mrs. Robertson. You should have realized that there are very few good single men at your age, but you didn't even fish in those waters. Did you really believe you could catch a talented young guy and keep him? You should have known that sooner or later you might actually have to talk to him and make a life with him instead of just having sex with them. God, Doc, real life really sucks sometimes." I'm standing on the back porch of the house Wendy and I bought together shortly after we got married 10 years ago. For many reasons, we felt we should have our own home. It's a smaller house with only 2 bedrooms, but it has a large living room and a large family room, so there's room to accommodate when we have all 3 kids and their families. We have already become grandparents 6 times. I'm grilling when Wendy comes out with a couple of whiskeys on the rocks. She hands one to me and I peck her on the lips. I can't help but marvel at how she looks 20 years younger than her 63 years. She still takes good care of herself, although her light brown hair has some gray in it, but she can still turn some heads when she dresses up for one of our casual nights out on the town. Hey, we may be old, but we're not dead yet. In fact, we still have fun in the bedroom twice a week and sometimes have a little fun in the shower. Anything is possible because medical science is a gift from the goddess. Even though I loved Tracy with all my heart when we were married, I just can't imagine not spending the rest of my life with Wendy. She captured my heart in a way Tracy never did. In some twisted way, I should be grateful that Tracy cheated on me because without that pain, I would never have had this pleasure. I run into Tracy every few months. She hasn't looked so good for a long time. She always looks sad and constantly apologizes. I always think about it, but I'm too polite to ever say the word thank you out loud. At 65, Tracy's large bosoms no longer rise high, but with a good support bra, it was less noticeable. She got her cheesecake bum back, and as she walks through the mall, she realizes that men no longer pay any attention to her. As she headed to her car in the parking lot, she noticed Mark walking towards her. She made sure to stand straight as he approached. "Hello, beautiful," he said affably, leaning down to kiss her on the cheek. Tracy couldn't help but blush at the compliment. They engaged in small talk for a few minutes, mostly about their shared grandchildren. Before Mark said it was time for him to go, he knew what would happen next. "Mark, I'm really sorry," Tracy said. As usual, Mark looked straight into Tracy's eyes, hesitated, and smiled. Without saying anything, he got into the car and moved forward, moving on with his life.